what he knows, he seeks to help us to comprehend and apply in our own experience of Christ as individuals and as couples. I invite you to walk with Scott as he shows you how the gospel rescues sex. With your Bible in hand, you can carefully apply what you hear and experience a transformed marriage for the glory of God. Kevin Carson, pastor, professor, author, counselor. Preface. Another night had ended in frustration and discouragement. No matter how many conversations they'd had or how many books they'd read, Jerome and Naomi simply couldn't seem to get on the same page. Even when things were going well, just one miscommunication had the potential to bring years of disappointment and hurt to the surface. Anger and bitterness would roar into the bedroom like a flash flood, overtaking everything in their path. One time, the resulting argument even woke their kids. How are they supposed to explain the tears running down their faces that late at night? Sex seemed so complicated and demanding. It had never come easy. It left them both wondering, if sex is a gift from God, why did he give us such a broken and defective gift? Holden and Monica had a very different problem. Physical intimacy was an almost daily part of their relationship. They both had high libidos and prioritized being together as often as they could. Yet, for all the sex they were having, there was a strange emptiness to it. They consistently found it physically enjoyable, but each went through seasons of feeling more used than loved. Sex often felt more like a chore, albeit a fun chore, than a way to really connect, and they struggled with a nagging sense of disappointment, no matter how often they were together. They would wonder, why did God create us with such strong desires that always leave us unfulfilled, even when we're physically satisfied? Shu and Yuka had been married for decades. They had a healthy relationship in many ways, including physically. But when Shu got sick, their sexual relationship went on the back burner. After a years-long battle, Shu eventually recovered, and he resumed most of his previous activities. One of the lingering physical effects, though, was an almost complete loss of sexual desire. Shu counted it a blessing in one sense, since he was no longer tempted to lust. But this was a real disappointment for Yuka, whose desire for physical intimacy had increased as she aged. Yuka wanted to know, why does God allow me to feel this kind of desire when my husband so rarely does? Was his previous desire for me just some physiological urge? Luis and Isabel had just returned from their honeymoon and were in a bit of a panic. Leading up to their wedding, they had talked about the problem of sexual expectations, but they had still assumed that things would go much more smoothly than they had. Their time together in the bedroom over their first week of marriage was filled with awkwardness, embarrassment, and divergent desires. They knew not to expect some sort of Disneyland experience and had figured it would be more akin to the county fair variety of sex. What they got, though, felt like an abandoned arcade with no electricity. Now, they were wondering if they had made a mistake in getting married. Why did God call us together if we're sexually incompatible? If sex is this much work, what's the point? Why did God create us like this? Maybe you see yourself in one of these stories, or maybe your story's a bit different. Maybe you've asked some of these same questions. Maybe different questions have arisen as you've navigated your own sexuality and sexual experiences. When it comes to our sexuality, each of our journeys is filled with its own unique blessings and challenges. But whether we're young or old, satisfied or frustrated, hurt or healed, we all have questions about sex and sexuality, whether we're willing to ask them or not. And the most fundamental and difficult questions we have are those that begin with why. Why do we have sexed bodies that fit together in perfect complementarity? And why does